All right, so this deep dive, it's a wild one. We're diving into this YouTube clip, and wow, talk about explosive faith, politics, and whoa, the personal drama is off the charts.
Yeah, it's like you're seeing this clash of, really deeply held beliefs, and then you throw in these personal loyalties,
Mm.
and it's all playing out online.
Yeah.
It just really, I don't know, highlights how complicated this whole thing is.
Yeah.
Navigating faith and politics, especially, I think, within historically Black denominations.
Absolutely, and it gets so personal so fast.
Right.
We've got this speaker. He's identified as a bishop, but we
Mhm.
don't know his name. And he is fired up, fired up about this older clip. Bishop J. Sheard endorsing Kamala Harris back in 2020.
Yeah.
And that's like the match that lit the fuse.
Right, yeah, and what's interesting is how the speaker connects his issues with Kamala Harris, his criticism of her, back to concerns about the Black community. It's not just like, oh, I disagree with her politically. He's making this argument that her stance on stuff like same-sex marriage actually directly impacts the challenges that Black families are already facing.
Yeah, he specifically calls out like the high rate of single-parent households. And it's almost like he's implying that like by supporting same-sex marriage, she's only going to make that worse.
Right. Like it's feeding into these negative stereotypes.
Exactly.
And that's where it gets interesting, because he's really making this case for traditional family structures,
Yeah.
saying that's crucial, that's key for the Black community to thrive.
Right.
And he sees Harris's stance as undermining that,
Right.
which is, I mean, look, it's a controversial argument, but whether you agree with him or not, I think it shows how deeply he cares about the community, about its social fabric.
Yeah, and he doesn't stop there, right? I mean, he goes on to connect abortion with, and this is his language, the devaluation of Black lives.
Exactly. And that connection, man, it's revealing, right?
Yeah.
Because he sees those issues as like intertwined
Yeah.
with abortion being this devaluation of life that he believes disproportionately, impacts Black people. Again, supercharged argument, but you can tell, like, this is something he feels very, very strongly about.
Oh, absolutely. But okay, hold on, because this is where it takes a turn.
Yeah.
He doesn't just go after Kamala Harris's policies. He goes after the people who criticized him for criticizing her. And he accuses them of, well, hypocrisy and even misconduct.
Yeah, this is where the gloves come off and the personal drama really explodes. He starts naming names, talking about these alleged wrongdoings. And I mean, it's like he's painting this picture that completely contradicts their public image.
It's not even subtle.
No. And he is not holding back. He goes into specific incidents, talks about Bishop Sheard and this William guy.
Right.
And it is not flattering at all.
No, it's very specific. Like, he wants us to be right there with him, seeing these alleged acts of infidelity, the financial stuff,
Right.
the hypocrisy.
It's like, I don't know, it reminds you that even these institutions that we put on these pedestals, right? These bastions of morality and all that, they're still made up of people.
Right.
And people are flawed.
They are indeed. And the way he frames it, it's like he's saying, oh, you're coming after me. Okay, well, you might want to take a look in the mirror first. It's like, whoa, this just got real.
Yeah, it adds this whole other dimension to the story,
Yeah.
Faith, politics, and now it's like, wait, is there more to this?
Right. And suddenly it's like way more personal, It is not just about politics anymore. It's about character and who to believe.
It's about trust, right? Who do you trust? And he's really leaning into that.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. And that's where he brings up Bishop Patrick Wooden, right? Like, that's his right-hand man in all of this.
Yeah, he keeps coming back to that relationship.
And it's interesting how he uses that specific story about Bishop Wooden supposedly being offered a promotion and turning it down because he didn't want to, I don't know, like outshine or overstep.
Yeah, like usurp his position or something.
Exactly. It's like he's holding Bishop Wooden up as this example of integrity.
Oh, absolutely. Like, this guy, he's the real deal. He's a man of principle.
Yeah.
He could have had it all.
Right. And he even uses those words, right? True friend, man of God.
Exactly. He's building this contrast, between Bishop Wooden and these other figures who he's basically painting as, I don't know, power-hungry and kind of shady.
And it's smart. It's like he's trying to, like, boost his own credibility by being like, look, if Bishop Wooden trusts me, then maybe you should too.
Right. It's like, I must be doing something right if this guy's got my back.
Exactly. And it's not just about defending himself, right? It's like he's saying something bigger about loyalty, about how important it is in this community, especially when, he feels like those bonds have been totally broken.
Yeah, it makes you think about the role of trust in these spaces. I mean, we're talking about religious institutions, right?
Yeah.
Places that are supposed to be about unity and forgiveness and all that. And yet, here we are with this very public and very messy display of, well, basically just accusations and betrayal.
Yeah, and you can't forget, like, this is all happening on YouTube. This isn't some private conversation. This is out there for the whole world to see.
Right. And that changes things. Suddenly, you're not just arguing with someone in private, you're putting it all out there on this massive platform.
It's like airing your dirty laundry.
Yeah, for everyone to see and judge and comment on. And it's got to have some kind of impact, right? Like on the church itself, on the followers, on everyone involved.
And it makes you wonder about, like, the long-term effects of that, you know? How do you come back from that? How do you rebuild trust after something like this?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't know if there are any easy answers.
Hmm.
But I think it speaks to something really important, which is that these institutions, as much as we might want to see them as somehow separate or above it all, they're still made up of people.
Right.
And people
Yeah.
are complicated and messy and flawed and, they make mistakes.
Big ones sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this clip, it forces us to confront that, to kind of look beyond the idealized image we might have of these institutions and be like, okay, this is the reality.
Yeah, it's not always pretty.
Not always,
Mm.
but it's real. And I think there's something valuable in that, in recognizing that and grappling with it.
But it is interesting, though, right? Like, even with all this drama, all this finger-pointing, he keeps saying, I'm a Christian. Like, that's important to him.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets really complicated, because on the one hand, you have this guy, he's clearly angry, he's calling people out, he's not letting it go. But then there's this other side, this struggle.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to figure out how to make all of these actions, his feelings, how to square that with his faith.
Right, right.
It's like, how do you reconcile that anger, that need for, I don't know, maybe even revenge with forgiveness, with grace,
Yeah.
the things that are supposed to be the core of his beliefs?
Yeah. And he even says, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something like, look, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but they're not either.
Right.
Like, he knows it's kind of a mess, the whole thing, but he still feels like, I don't know, justified or something.
And isn't that just so human, though? We all have those moments, right? Where we fall short, where we're maybe a little hypocritical. But it's different when it's, the people you're supposed to look up to, the leaders, the ones who are supposed to embody those ideals.
Exactly. Like, where do you even begin to process that when the people who are supposed to be the example are the ones, messing up?
It's a tough one, and I think it's something that resonates even outside of this specific situation. Like, we've all had those moments of disillusionment, whether it's family, friends, people we work with, whoever. It's that feeling of, man, I thought you were better than this.
Totally. It's like a loss of innocence almost.
Yeah.
And it makes you question everything.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think, if anything, this clip, it just reminds us that these institutions, these religious institutions, they're not immune to that. They're not above it all. They're still just made up of people.
Right. Flawed, messy people.
Exactly. And that
But-
doesn't excuse anything, but it does make you think about it a little differently. Yeah.
It does. So where does that leave us? I mean, what are we supposed to take away from all of this?
Well, I think it's a reminder to look deeper. Don't just take things at face value. Remember that there are always multiple sides to every story. And that even when people say they're acting out of faith, out of good intentions, there might be other stuff going on.
Right. Other motivations. Human
It's,
stuff.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a call for, I don't know, maybe a little more empathy, a little more understanding that none of us are perfect. We're all just trying to figure things out as we go.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, that is a lot to unpack. Thank you for guiding us through this incredibly messy but really fascinating deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. It's always a good conversation.
Always. And listeners, thank you for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to get you thinking. Until then, stay curious.